Let's talk about outlining, also known as backstitching. I use those terms interchangeably. I'll sometimes say outline stitches and sometimes back stitches, but they're basically the same thing. In traditional folk embroidery, like this design here, using outline stitches or back stitches to outline can add a huge amount of interest to the design. This is the yard hoop kit design. It also comes in a table runner version. And this is an excellent example of how using back stitches to outline and add little flourishes can completely transform a design. So in this design, this is sort of a really great example of that technique. In this design, there's really not that many cross stitches. The cross stitches don't take that long to put in. It's doing all the outlining that really throws the design into relief and adds all of this intricacy. And here it's used to outline little shapes. It's also used to add additional little stitches here in this little border and make this border a little bit more, it darkens up this border here, this little tiny one here. And then it has the little additional flourishes added here, which are pretty common in traditional folk embroidery. So when I do this, I just start with, I always outline or you do back stitches with 2 strands of floss. I like a heavier look like that. And so I also find that 2 strands of floss actually really does outline your other cross stitches. The other thing I do is I always work all of the cross stitches first. Not always for the entire design, but I will for like an entire section, and then I'll do the outlining. It's best if you do the outline or the back stitching after you've worked all of the colored cross stitches. Now an outline stitch, or also known as a back stitch, is the exact same stitch as a cross stitch. It's just done not only, it can be done diagonally, like a cross stitch is done diagonally like this, and a back stitch can be done diagonally over 2 threads, but it can also be done horizontally and vertically. And that gives you a little bit more intricacy to work with. So for here, you can see that I've outlined these. I'm coming in to do this one, and I'm going to come in close. I typically go in like this, and then I come out where my floss first came out. I go like this, and I make the next stitch, and then I come back to that stitch like this. And then I'm coming back in wherever I came out. You can also just keep kind of coming backwards, but you'll go through more floss and your back won't be quite as tidy. And just to give you an idea of what the back looks like, actually on this one, it actually looks fairly tidy. My backs never look like perfectly tidy, but that gives you an idea of what this looks like. It creates a little bit less bulk on the back if you do it that way. So I'm going to show that to you one more time, where you basically come out like that, okay, pull through, go into the next one, like that. Now, you can come out here to take the next step, but what I typically do is as soon as I can, I actually come out there. Again, that will give you a little bit tidier back. It also, I think it kind of helps the stitch lay just a little bit neater. I love outlining too because it can really create like shapes within shapes. This is a good example. This is creating sort of another little shape within this shape here. And I usually will just work all the way around like that. Now I've finished outlining this section and I've traveled up here and I've outlined this little section, and now I'm getting ready to work one of those little flourishes. So the way you do that is you just keep working the stitches. These little flourishes use a combination of vertical, horizontal, and diagonal stitches. Oftentimes these little curlicues are worked with a combination of vertical and horizontal stitches like this, like what I'm working on right now. And they just add so much. And this is the reason that I use 2 strands, is that in many of these designs, The flourish, the little flourish, is not next to another cross stitch or anything like that. It's sitting on its own. And sometimes if you work them with a single strand of floss, they just don't show up very well. So I really like to work them with 2 strands of floss. And I'm just going over 2 stitches and working my way around. Just like that. And you can see this little flourish is starting to appear. These are actually really fun to work. These are in a number of designs. The Corinthian Floral has a really great row of them. Iris's Paint Box has a lovely section of them. Actually, the folk costume of Rakova, Greece uses a lot of outlining and back stitches like this. And you just kind of keep working in until you get into the center. And on your pattern, you'll just see these as a solid line as opposed to a filled in block of color. And then when I get out here, I'll just keep outlining. I'll reach here and I'll just come over here. Sometimes I'll travel a little bit more with outline stitches if that feels good. If I have to go from one area to another, sometimes I'll go on the back of my hoop and I'll travel the thread through a few extra, the backs of a few other stitches just to secure it. And I'll just keep working around. And then when I get here, I'll do the same thing here. And then I'll also work the outlining here as the pattern specifies and put that last little flourish in. And that shows you how to use outlining in your folk embroidery.